You can't eat. First it was assault.
What's going on?
We could feel that it was a good movie, man. There was good stuff happening.
Any man playing grab ass or fight in the building spends a night in a box.
Man, you sure can shoot.
It is at the end of a long tradition of American movies in which the heroes were the prisoners, the criminals, and the underdog.
Any man don't keep order spends a night in the box. I hope you ain't gonna be a hard case.
Cool Hand Luke is as good today, I think, as it was 40 years ago. The yearning is the same, the loss is the same, the making of a bad situation. Those stories never go away.
You're an original. That's what you are. The man, boy, get the man. That's my darling, Luke. He grinned like a baby, but he bites like a gator.
Throughout the 1960s, I was a TV director, and I lived in New York, but I was very, very anxious to get into features. So I had worked with Felicia Farr. She was married to Jack Lemmon. And she said to me one day, you know, Jack is looking for a picture that he's not in. He's got wonderful offices over at Columbia. So I said, what if I think I have it?
There was this property, Cool Hand Luke, that apparently was picked up out of a bin for 19 cents by Stuart Rosenberg, and who wanted to make this into a film.
And we went to see the brass at Columbia. They said, okay, you can develop a screenplay, but you have to use one of our staff writers, Frank Pearson.
I've never really known what I had done that would lead people to think that I was the right person to do the screenplay of the picture. Except that I had written Cat Ballou, which was, you know, a wildly popular comedy. Not actually my kind of comedy. I think I'm more darkly ironic than that picture was, and so this fitted me absolutely to a T.
Don't we ever talk? I think you just said something.
And we went back to them with the screenplay. They said, no, we don't want to do a prison picture.
And Columbia did not want to make a picture with Paul Newman dying at the end, so they just said, if he dies at the end, we're not going to make the picture.
So we said, well, all this work, but Paul, he had a deal at Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers, which specialized in having people killed off in the end, from the 30s onward, said, great, we'll find a way to do this. And in the same way that the 30s films had a sensibility of the time, it's updated very much a sensibility of the 60s that overlay it and the themes that were behind it.
You don't listen much, do you, boy? I ain't heard that much worth listening to. There's a lot of guys laying down a lot of rules and regulations.
It was unique. It certainly was a good example of the anti-hero who is really has immense integrity and society is corrupt, you know. And a lot of those early films were bad guys who really were the only people who understood justice.
It's interesting what Paul Newman said about it. He said, I hope you're not going to write this for me. And I know exactly what he wanted. He wanted a part that he could stretch to play rather than somebody writing to all of his strengths, you know, and just thinking about Paul Newman playing this part as opposed to who Cool Hand Luke, the character in the book, truly was.
I never planned anything in my life.
This was practically autobiographical. In fact, I tell people that Cool Hand Luke was, roughly, just figuratively speaking, was 1/3 the real Cool Hand Luke. There was a man named Cool Hand Luke, and he was somewhat like the one depicted in the story. The other third was me, personally, particularly the eating and the working. I was the eating champion and the working champion. And the other third was just bullshit, you know, to glue the pieces together.
I knew that I could bring to it a sense of structure because the novel kind of meanders through its story. The book stands on its own. But as a dramatic structure, what you really need is very powerful motivations to bring about the things that happen to people. And so it's life and death stuff.
Wish you'd stop being so good to me, Captain. Don't you ever talk that way to me. Never! Never!
The problem with Newman and his characters, with any character that you're writing for Paul Newman, is that it's very hard to make him a bad guy. They tried very hard to do it in HUD. They tried to make him one of the most terrible sons of bitches that ever lived, mean to everybody you could, and you end up walking out of the theater still feeling affection for him.
In the book, He drives his pickup into a diner, crashes in and steals the money. I felt an awful lot of small businessmen wouldn't find that very heroic. So I wanted to get something that was neutral, something that everybody could relate to.
So he's won the Silver Star, he's won the Bronze Star, he's won the Purple Heart. He's drinking a lot one night and decides it'll be fun to take the tops off parking meters. But he's led this pretty heroic life leading up to that, and now it's in this downward spiral.
Like I was just passing time, Captain.
Newman has been a major leading man star for half a century. He has never been less than that. He works very hard and he works in his head. There's a meticulousness about what he does. It's very, very difficult and hard work.
What he had an uncanny ability to do was to find the other side of every scene. It was obvious that he was this tough loser, but what was the other side? He's a thinking actor, and that's what impressed me more than anything.
About 20 of us in the production were members of the Actors Studio, including Paul Newman.
To work with stars didn't mean anything to us in New York. I mean, it really didn't. Particularly if we were all members of the Actors Studio, the idea was you get to work with a good actor. So it was just about the work, and Paul was part of us.
You owe that fella a cold drink.
Fairly recently, he put in the paper, he is basically a character actor. And I thought about it, and he's absolutely correct. Not only Cool Hand Luke, HUD, whether he's shooting pool or shooting the left-handed gun or whatever, he became Rocky Graziano. He became who he was.
Paul never went for the cheap, never went for the easy cry, the easy laugh, never went for anything easy. And that's what I found his correlation with his approach to the part and the part, because Luke never went for anything easy either.
That's who Luke is, the myth of Sisyphus, which is the guy who had to roll the rock up to the top of the hill, and every day it would roll down, and he'd have to repeat it. Luke's attitude is, I'm not giving in.
I'll be back at it in the morning, just need a little nap.
In those years, he wanted to direct, and his attitude was the director's in charge. And even if he disagreed with the scene, he said, I'll give it to you. Much more than that you can't ask for.
Paul was actually very friendly, probably friendlier than any major star I've worked with. And when it got really hot, he would open up the trunk of his sedan and come up with a cold beer for us, which was just great.
Paul was one of the boys, you know, was just like a bunch of prisoners on leave there.
The cast of Cool Hand Luke was like a hydrogen bomb waiting to go off.
Most of us had a game because we'd been in the theater. So we had a game, and our game was acting. The game we didn't understand was movies.
It took us months to put that cast together because I was very careful about who was the various characters. I wanted each one to stand out. And as it turned out, we had a hell of a bull gang because all of those guys made it.
He knew he was going to be a lot of faces, you know, there were going to be a lot of characters. So I think he had a musical sense that way. What were the instruments going to be that we were going to orchestrate this music with?
Tearing the heads off of, who was it? Gumball Machine.
I was known as a good character actor, but I said to my agent, they're not going to give me half of a picture with Paul Newman. And Stuart Rosenberg, the director, asked if I would test. And then after the test, the first words I said to him was, if there was only more time to prepare at such a good role. He took my hand and he said, you're going to have all the time you want.
What I was looking for was a big, lovable bear because I felt he had to be big enough to boss the likes of Paul Newman.
Okay, new meat. You get some sleep. And save your strength, because you're going to need it.
But I wanted to make him lovable.
All right, stand back, you pedestrians. This ain't no automobile accident.
The script had various odd names. Big Blondie and Little Blondie and all that.
Dog boy, shut them dogs up.
Oh, Coco?
Yeah, Dragline.
Hey, Babaluga. Tramp, there you go, beauty.
Hey, yeah, man, you got your bull gang name now.
Coco. He's always just mewing around. You know, that's stay close to the power. stay close to the power and you have power, even though you have to kiss butt to get it, you know. So that was my basic approach to Coco.
The hard stuff was trying to contain these dogs as they grabbed you, dragged you. And the last thing I wanted to do was to be a problem in a take, you know. I didn't want to be the one that said, we have to take it over. So at one point, the dog dragged me under a fence, and I just held on and went, here we go. I liked the character because he was kind of the anti-prisoner, and so people didn't like him. It kind of marginalized me in the group.
He stayed on the periphery more than, he didn't dance with us, you know, because of his role. We all made fun of him as a character.
You getting so you smell so bad I could track you myself.
Yeah, well, that ought to be easy for a genuine son of a bitch.
They were all so good in roles that really were not enough for their power.
I think I'm the only one in that prison for life. Carr, this floor walker, you know, put the top sheet here, the bottom sheet here, you spend the night in the box. It's so funny as I'll run into people, just see me and start reciting it.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Strother Martin is as great a character actor who has ever lived. There's not an inauthentic line, I think, that Strother Martin has ever delivered.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
I was typing along, writing that scene, and all of a sudden the words appeared on the paper. And I looked at it and I said, oh my God, that's good.
There was a great argument about whether that was too intellectual a line for a guard to be saying. Pearson apparently spent a whole day writing a backstory for how Strother Martin could say a line like this.
He said, no, it's absolutely right that these guys will hit on one word. If you watch a lot of reality shows, you'll see that the tough guys have one word in their dialogue.
And at any rate, they left it in.
Come on, son.
We were all out at the swimming pool swimming and messing around. All of a sudden, this scrawny little guy gets up on the 10-foot board and does a beautiful 1.5. And Strother, evidently, in 1932, had tried out for the Olympics. It was just amazing.
I just enjoyed the guys. We got to be so many of us so close. I mean, Dennis Hopper, who didn't have one word in the movie. He was Baba Lugotz. He just mumbled stuff. A lot of good friendships developed.
This is a bunch of crazy actors.
I know some of my compatriots have been quoted as saying, show me a happy set, I'll show you a bad movie. Just the opposite with Cool Hand Luke. You never saw people get along so well.
I realized that the most important thing with this group was this group had a bond, and they had a bond very quickly. So I never wanted to lay down laws. You were over there, this one's over here. Like the assistant director came to me and said, I can't get their attention. They're playing cards all the time.
They'd be in the weeds, smoking, doing everything. And I'd say, all right, let's go, let's get ready, everyone get on the set. And they'd swear at me, dirty gestures.
So I said, but they're thieves. They're in prison. Let them do what they want to do so that it'll come off.
And he put his hand on my shoulder, I'll never forget, and he said, Hank, this is a picture about animals. I don't want them to feel regimented. I don't care how long it takes. You just do it the way you're doing it, which is a sign of a good director. He gave a clue, so afterwards there was no regimentation.
Hank was perfect for this film because he was soft-spoken. There was hardly any yelling on our sets. He was on our side because he knows what an actor has to go through.
It was like a big fraternity. At night, half the crew would play poker.
Kick it back a bar.
Well, I do remember that we used to party a lot, and we got in late, and it was hot, and we'd have a few drinks. And a couple of times, I got in a little trouble because I was I haven't been drinking for a lot of years now, but then.
Ralph is across. He says, "Lou!" As I come in, he starts walking toward me with this big drunken grin on his face. And he starts taking off his shirt. By the time Ralph is 2 feet away from me, he's stark naked and a big grin on his face. But that's the way we were with each other. I can't tell you how that infused itself into the movie. And as artists, we just trusted each other. Do what you want to do, and I'll try to catch up.
Somewhere in Warner Brothers, there's about 40 million feet of a girl washing a car that never appeared anywhere. Joy was round. She was the roundest girl I think I've ever seen in my life.
Taking them off here, boss.
All right, take it off, Greg.
Damn things is blocking the scenery.
I went over to wardrobe and they worked on a dress. I thought it was going to be in a bikini, but they just made it perfect that it just like hugged me all over.
I'm sure that everybody you talk to will have a different story about that. As I recollect, her name was not even on the call sheet.
I'm dying.
And we certainly didn't know she was staying at our motel.
Basically, I worked with Mr. Rosenberg, and he took so much time to tell me how to do it. There was an idea that he had thought through about every little move that I made, each time looking over at all the prisoners.
Maybe I'm romanticizing it as an actor-director, but we shot our reactions first. So the first time we see Joy, she's off camera and you're on us. So it's the first time we've ever seen it. And of course, she did her job off camera. I mean, she was a very big help to us.
Hey, Lord, whatever I done, don't strike me blind for another couple of minutes.
The men were there, and it was very cold. I remember that, and it was cloudy, and the whole cast was by a hillside watching it.
Those close-ups were real. We were all, whoa!
The guys, they wanted her to do that all day and hold the hose and let it squirt. And I've gotten a lot of letters on that scene. People really responded to that.
I was very innocent, naive, and you probably won't believe this, no one probably will, but I didn't know there was other meanings for like the hose and the soap and all what I was doing. I was just washing this old car.
This car wash scene allows two things to happen. One, you get a sense of how terrible these guys' lives are, that this is the best thing that they can hope for to happen. And the second is that it allows for some tension to be developed for the fight scene. You have to have something to set up the fight. People are saying to him, it sets the theme too for the film, just stop, just stop, just stop. And of course, Luke can't stop. But he proves himself in a way by being able to take this tremendous amount of punishment that he doesn't stop. He can't stop.
So let him hit you in the nose and get some blood flowing. Maybe the bosses will stop it before he kills you. I don't want to frighten him.
Luke was an existential hero. If you want to judge Luke, you have to judge him on what he does, not what he says.
Stay down.
Unless you were really far away, Paul and I had to do it. The double did not look like Paul and me. It was up close, so we did it all. The sheer exhaustion of 3 days of falling down and hitting and what have you. We were both, and Paul has always been in marvelous shape, we were both very relieved that it was over.
Paul would wake up in the morning, fill the sink with ice cubes, plunge his head in, come up, and he was Paul Newman, one of the beautiful men of the world, you know.
They did not have the phrase six-pack in those days, and Paul had one. I would say, how do you do that, Paul? He'd say, well, slant board, 200 sit-ups a morning, sauna, and then face in the ice water. And that was it.
I can eat 50 eggs.
Hey, why? Just to keep everybody alive in that prison, you know, keep them going.
The editing in that sequence is brilliant because you think he ate every egg, but he didn't. I don't think he even ate one.
The poor guy had to eat about 12 eggs.
Probably in the neighborhood of 8.
He just kept eating the eggs.
First day at Warner Brothers, this was in the last 3 weeks of the picture, the prop men cooked 200 hard-boiled eggs. And all of us actors are always hungry. We ate, you know, we went through the whole 200 eggs, right? The second day, the smell of overnight hard-boiled eggs permeated the entire stage. Nobody went near them. So the third day, we could hardly come to work, and you would shoot until the sequence was over, and all the actors, Paul included, ran for the door to get outside and get on some air.
He also had this muscular control where he could distend his stomach.
Just like a ripe watermelon was about to bust itself open.
It's one of my favorite scenes because to find a way of being funny and making a humorous scene in those conditions was daunting.
Every cent in camp is riding.
This gang been doing so good, the captain decided to give you something special.
It was midsummer, and the tar sequence on the road was just as hard as it looked. Rosenberg, at the very beginning of the picture, got the entire cast together. Not Paul, but he got all the rest of us, and for, I think it was the better part of 3 weeks, we practiced with the big machetes and with the shovels and what have you in the backyard of Warner Brothers, so that we were handy with the instruments when we were out on the truck.
The author of the book, Don Pierce, he was one of the prisoners. You see him in and out of the movie.
They really used me as a technical advisor. And they asked me about the piles of sand. How high should the sand piles be and how close together should they be? And I was kind of stunned because, I couldn't get this wrong, but I couldn't remember exactly it, and I kind of did it by eye. And then he came over to me and says, Don, I have it on pretty good authority that it can't be done. And I looked over his shoulder and I saw who the authority was. This was an engineer from the California Highway Patrol. And I said, well, here's the way you do it with the shovel. And I showed them there's a certain way you have to spin the shovel to fan the dirt out. So we shot that scene and it worked.
It was smelly and good and hot and the way it should be.
You don't know whether to smile, spit, or swallow.
You got to be a prisoner. That's the amazing thing about movies. When you leave the stage, you walk through the door in your dressing room. And the movies, you're there.
I had an interview with Stuart Rosenberg and I think Gordon Carroll, who was the producer. And I said, you have three possibilities here. One is to go Americana symphonic like Aaron Copland. The other is to go bluegrass music with harmonica and banjos and 12-string guitars. And the other possibility is the combination of both, and that's what I would do. And they liked that, and that's how they hired me.
The thing that I liked about Lalo was he didn't surround a scene with music, so that when you ran down the alley, you expected to see the jazz band at the other end. What he did was he created a character, another voice.
The only complaint I have about this score is that when there's this great sudden anarchic act that's going on, when Luke says, come on, let's hurry up, they want this road done, let's finish it, let's get it done. The music that's playing became the theme for Eyewitness News. So this wonderful act of defiance and bravado becomes the theme music for news. That's the only part. Great for Schifrin. He must have made a ton on it.
They were showing the movie sometimes on TV at night, like sometimes after the news, and some of my colleagues were calling me and saying, Lalo, I still love that score, but why did you have to use the theme of Eyewitness News?
Luke is not an educated guy, and the news that his mother died, I felt it needed something. So I went to Paul and I said, I'd like you to sing this ditty. And he said, first of all, I don't sing. Second of all, I don't play the banjo. And you want to add that on top of acting in the scene. So I said, we'll do it the last thing in the picture. I'll get somebody in here every day to teach you the chords. And that's what we did. And Paul is just marvelous that way.
Virgin Mary assuring me that I won't go home.
Connie Hall, in my estimation, was one of the best cameramen in the world. He reminded me of a lot of British cameramen, because among many other things, he was concerned with contrast. He would tell me, look at this and look at that, look how one bleeds into the other. And he had a very good story mind, so there needed to be very little conversation. He understood the book, he understood the screenplay, but it was a pleasure working with him. Stunning film. As a matter of fact, I got one criticism that pisses me off to this day, that it was too pretty. I wanted the contrast to be a very beautiful atmosphere with these horrible living conditions.
The beauty is all around them. I don't see that they necessarily experience it themselves and so on, but there's a certain great irony in the beauty of the picture.
Ain't you scared of dying? Dying, boy, he can have this little life anytime he wants to.
When you see a man who is against all of these terrible forces arrayed against him, that he's bound to lose to.
Love me, hate me, kill me, anything. Just let me know it.
And in the end, these guys are so small and you've become so large as they have no alternative but to kill you.
Just standing in the rain.
I remember one time I was sitting in a bar and Paul Newman said that, you know, I have a good feeling about this movie. That's all I remember anyone really talking about it, you know. And it turned out to be a marvelous, kind of a classic now, I guess, you know.
It's a kind of the perfect Warner Brothers movie. Warner Brothers historically made prison films. It really was their bread and butter through the 30s in their gangster films when they had their Murderers Row of Muni and Robinson and Cagney. It's updated, although you have the sense that Life on a Chain Gang was this bad and pretty much the same all the way through. In the same way that the 30s films had a sensibility at the time, this was really very much a sensibility of the 60s that overlay it and the themes that were behind it. You look at the films, the other films that came out then too. You know, The Graduate and Bonnie and Clyde were both made at this time. It was like 1939 when there was that great clutch of films together. These of a completely different nature, but the same sense of alienated individuals trying to make their way through.
It's one of the great characters in cinema.
The man's got to go his own way.
Guess I just gotta love you and let go.
It was a lot of fun to shoot the film because working with Paul is really just a pleasure.
All you got to do is give up. Nice and quiet. Just play it cool.
George Kennedy won an Academy Award for it.
An absolute, complete surprise. It meant, everything to me. All of a sudden, a guy who was either the first or the second man through the door is now an Academy Award winner. There is no substitute for that.
Lalo was nominated, Paul Newman was nominated, the writers were nominated. I always have a tendency to say I'd like to give the money back because I enjoyed it so much.
I'm so grateful to have been part of such a beautiful major movie that it's just a wonderful memory that I have.
There's only one Cool Hand Luke, and his name happens to be Paul Newman.
When Paul gets shot by Morgan Woodward, I remember Rosenberg saying, "My God," as I was waiting to cue you on the camera to run to Woodward and pick him up. He said I was like unleashing a caged lion. But that's how much it meant to me. That's how much it meant to all of us.
I've done enough world shaking for a while. You do the rest of it for me. Send me a postcard about it.
You a good old boy, Luke.